I just want to share my excitement about depth crawls, which I've recently discovered by reading The Stygian Library by Emmy Allen. A depth crawl is a way to procedurally generate a vast unknown, or like a vast space, like a dungeon. In the Stygian Library, it is a infinite library with infinite rooms. And so since you can't really map that out, what do? Well, the answer that Emmy came up with is the depth crawl. So the depth crawl idea is that every room that you walk into is going to be rolled on a random table. But each time you visit a new area in succession, you add a 1 to your roll. So for instance, the random table might have 50 entries, but you're only rolling a d20. And, for your first possible room, you have choices of 1 through 20, but then when you go to the next room, when you decide to press forward, you then get to add a +1 to that roll. So now you're going from number 2 through 21. I think depth crawls are a really interesting way to generate locations, and I see there's a lot of design potential in this. Like for instance, let's say that you want to have a dungeon with a ton of rooms, and eventually they'll need to get to the big bad boss lair. Well, what you could do, for instance, is have 40 entries on the location table and make the 40th entry, anything on a roll of 40 plus, be the big bad guy's dungeon room, and then you roll d20 and then you continue to go forward. And what this does is it ensures that players will not get to the end or the big stuff until they have at least gone through a fair amount of the lesser or littler stuff first. And that's kind of how you especially when you get to the random encounter tables, which go along with the locations, they also have the progress modifier on them. And so you would for instance put the easier encounters at first and then the more difficult encounters towards the end, so things kind of progress as one would expect, start ramping up. This is a really kind of a quick version of what a depth crawl is, but I think, again, it has a lot of great potential for design space. I've just finished writing an adventure in which I am using the depth crawl mechanics to simulate a sea voyage, right? Where the end destination is on the location table, but you have to go through a fair amount of stuff before you get there. And the depth crawl allows me to be able to simulate this journey without ever having to map anything out except for what happens at the table. I think it's really neat. I think it's really interesting design here, and I think I'm going to do a really long video kind of breaking this down and what I'm doing with it. But have you looked at depth crawls before? Have you checked out the Stygian Library? It's phenomenal, and if you haven't, you really should. If you have, hey, let me know what your thoughts are on it.